welcome back to ASPA Podcast. Today we are with Sean Petro. He is Assistant Chief Human Resources Officer on Columbia Country School District in Georgia. Hello, Sean. Thank you for being with us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Sean, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? To
Sure.
start the
Yeah,
discussion.
sure. Yeah, my name is Sean Petro, and I'm with the Columbia County School District. That's right outside of Augusta, Georgia. We're home of the Masters Golf Tournament. If anybody's ever heard of that, that's kind of what we're known for in our area. I'm the Assistant Chief Human Resource Officer. I've been in this position since 2016. I graduated high school from the county I work in, and I've worked in the county since 2001. I actually began my career as a substitute teacher and then became a counselor and then a assistant principal and then transitioned into HR.
Okay, and today we are going to discuss about employability. So to start, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing education today?
The biggest challenge I believe facing education really is something that's probably been there since the beginning of time. Whenever the first people got together and said, "Hey, we should create a school to teach our kids or teach people," they probably had trouble deciding who was going to teach that class. So I think that really core problem is still here today. It's just finding enough qualified, exceptional teachers to teach our children. If you do a quick Google search, is there a national teacher shortage? You can find numerous websites out there that'll give you stats about how we're in a teacher shortage right now, how there's not enough teachers out there, how people are retiring at a faster rate than we're hiring people, how we're starting to have to hire teachers that aren't necessarily qualified, meaning they've graduated from a teacher prep program, those kind of things. So I believe that's a problem that has existed for a while. It's really a big problem right now, and it's probably one that's going to uh, continue to exist until we really are able to put some measures in place to combat that issue.
And what do you think are more people going into education right now?
Yeah, so I think the biggest problem with education and why people aren't going into it is we don't really have a great PR team. You know what I mean? Like there's not people out there on a national scale or even a state scale that are advocating for people to go into education. If I were a state leader or even a national leader, I would do some like media campaigns about trying to get people into education because the thing is there's a lot of misinformation out there. I actually do a presentation that I give to high school students and middle school students and college students. It's called Mythbusters. And during this presentation, I go through all the reasons of why people tell you not to go into education. And I give them the information to kind of combat those conversations that they have with people. And a lot of them come from their parents. Their parents are telling them, don't go into education. So I don't think we have a lot of good publicity out there, but I'm of the belief it's never been a better time to become an educator. There's just a lot of good out there in the education space. For one thing I like to tell people, we're very consistent. We are a stable profession. Teachers have been here since the beginning of time. They'll be here till the end of time. I often reference my first job I ever had. The first job I ever had growing up was Blockbuster Video. I worked at Blockbuster, where it was like a real big deal. People would go out with their families and they'd get a movie and they'd take it home and they'd watch it and they'd bring it back. I mean, that was a big thing for a lot of families when I was growing up. And now that doesn't exist anymore. You don't have it. But that's something you'll never say about education. It might look different, it might change, but at the core, it's always going to have a teacher and students. Also, when it comes to salaries, when I ask students, I say, "Hey, why do people tell you not to go into education?" The number one thing they'll tell you is you don't make any money, or you won't make any money, or anything like that. And the first thing I tell them is, "Okay, well, you're right. You're not going to become Taylor Swift rich. You're not going to become LeBron James rich being a teacher. Let's get that out of the way. But you can make a very good salary being an educator. Like in Georgia, where I'm from, a first year teacher makes $50,000 a year right out of school. And if the average teacher salary in my school district is $71,000. Well, actually, it's about $72,000 a year. And you only work 190 days, so that's $47 an hour. And some other professions that make $47 an hour is like nurse practitioner, air traffic controller, software engineer. So you'd never hear somebody say, "Hey, don't become a nurse practitioner because you don't make any money." But you'll hear numerous people tell you not to go into education because you don't make any money. And that's not even getting into the retirement aspect of it. Dave Ramsey, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him. Dave Ramsey has this research wing of his company called Ramsey. I can't remember the exact name of it. What is it? Anyways, like Ramsey Studies or something like that. They did a national study on millionaires where they interviewed 10,000 millionaires just about their finance, their financial literacy, what they did with their money, how they became millionaires, and everything like that. And you can look it up. And the third highest producing occupation of those 10,000 millionaires was teacher. Number one was engineer, number two was accountant, number three was teacher, four was management, and five was attorney. So the teaching aspect, while you may not, be the richest person in the world year to year, but the compounding cumulative effect of the money you earn over a 30-year career is substantial. There's another guy named Dell Alexander. He puts out a video in Georgia called the Million Dollar Wagon, and he talks about the average teacher benefit in retirement is about $42,000 a year. In order for people out in the corporate world to get a benefit retirement of $42,000, they have to have a 401k balance of over $1 million. So when you retire as a teacher, which a lot of people do in their early 50s, I'll retire at 54. My sister just retired as a teacher at 51. Pretty much no other profession can allow you that kind of age retirement other than like the military. But if you're not in the military, pretty much teaching affords you the earliest type retirement age. But when you retire at that salary of $42,000 a year for the rest of your life, you have in a pool of over $1 million. So technically, if you combine all your assets when you retire as an educator, you're generally considered, a millionaire because of your assets.
So if it's not a an economical issue, then what do you think it is? Is it maybe like a work-life balance issue?
Okay. That's a great point that you bring up. In education, there's this old saying that if Rick Van Winkle fell asleep in 1900 and he slept for 100 years and he woke up in the year 2024, he would see all these amazing things, these technological advances all throughout our country or the world. But if he walked into a school, he'd say, "Okay, I know this is a school." Not a lot has changed when it comes to education and the way it looks over the course of, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So we do fight the battle somewhat of work-life balance from the standpoint that the corporate world is able to offer people some things education has been slow to move on, like hybrid schedules. I know a lot of people love hybrid schedules or work from home. There's also some movement towards allowing people I don't know the exact term for it, but it's like fluid hours. Fluid hours meaning if you want to work from 10 in the morning to 8 at night, you can work that. If you want to work from 4 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon, you can work that. Also, some project-based hours, meaning that I have a project. If it takes me 4 hours to get it done, I'm done. If it takes me 10 hours to get it done, I'm done. So those are some of the things in education that we really struggle with because we're still kind of based on the child care model. You send your kids to school. Uh, you know, that's where your children are, then you go to work. So a lot of times it kind of mirrors that work day that people out in the corporate world have. But also another thing, I keep referring back to this Mythbusters thing that I give. I talk to kids about, they say, there's not great work-life balance, or, kids are challenging, parents are challenging, it's a stressful job. And I tell them, let's say you don't want to become an educator. Well, if you go become a nurse, or you go become an accountant, or you go become a lawyer, do you not think there's stress in those jobs? Like, just because you're not going to be an educator doesn't mean you're running from stress. If I had an audience of teachers and I said, "Tell me all your problems," they would be able to voice many concerns, and they would be able to say, "Hey, here's our problems, blah blah blah." But if I had the same audience and it was a bunch of nurses, or it was a bunch of lawyers, or it was a bunch of police officers, or a bunch of um, you know, maintenance workers. And I said, hey, tell me your problems. They would come up with a lot of problems too. And they would come up with a lot of situations where they necessarily might not love their job or like what they're doing or what have you. So, yes, teaching can be stressful and teaching can have a lot that goes into it. But as I tell those kids, you're not running from stress, you're not running from workloads just by going to a different profession. It's just a different set of circumstances that you're going to find challenging in that profession as well.
So, and that being said, how do you think that education is going to evolve in the next 10 or 15 years to like fill that gap that we are having right now?
Well, the one thing I think we definitely need to do is, as educators, we need to start promoting our profession more. You'll have teachers and really educators in general tell their own class, hey, don't become a teacher. You know what I mean? And that's one thing we have to combat. Like we don't need people in front of our students telling them not to go into education. So we need to do a much better job of really promoting our profession, getting the positives out there about our profession. So I think what you're going to see over the course of maybe the next 10 or 15 years, I think you're going to see school districts really engage in marketing, social media. I think a lot of school districts right now, they don't have marketing teams, they don't have social media teams, they don't have video production teams. I think you're going to see a shift to that, to where you're going to see, especially large school districts, you're going to see them have their own marketing wing. You're going to see them have their own probably like social media team, to where they're going out and they're shooting video and they're putting out content, because that's what the young workforce likes, you know. So I've been I've been I've been able to listen to these guys, Andrew McPeak and can't remember the other guy's name. Let me see. It's what's his name? Tim Elmore. Andrew McPeak and Tim Elmore, they talk about generations in employment, right? And the younger generation, they're wanting all these, they want agility in their jobs. They want to be able to change jobs every few years. And in education, we're generally on the model that you kind of work at a school, you work there for 10 years, then, you become an assistant principal if you want to, or we have teachers that work in the same building for 30 years. The younger people, they want a lot more agility. So we have to be okay with them maybe moving schools or moving school districts, those kind of things. They want to be able to promote their profession through social media. Education has been very slow to embrace social media because as educators, we have this thing called in loco parentis, which basically means in lieu of the parent. So you are seen as like a parent of all the children in your classroom. So with that comes a very high moral standard. So a lot of young educators, they're kind of getting in trouble with professional standards commissions because they're doing things on social media that isn't being held to that high moral standard. So we need to educate them more on that. But they love social media. They love being engaged. They love using technology. As education organizations, we have to embrace technology, bring more into it. Be quick to change. A lot of times in education, we're very slow to change because it's the way we've always done it. And this new worker that we have coming to us, they just want a lot more flexibility, like what you discussed, work-life balance. They want those kind of things. And so I just think, as I'm in the Generation X, and a lot of leaders we still have are baby boomers, and our mentality of we kind of we kind of work we live to work, where we're dedicated to our organization. We're dedicated to working 60 hours a week if it means getting the job done. We have to understand our younger folks aren't necessarily engaged that way, from the standpoint that they want work-life balance. They want to be able to go out with their friends. They want to be able to, have a life outside of school. So those are some of the things that we need to engage with our young people, engage with our young employees, figure out what they really want to do and how we can make them successful while integrating what they like about life and teaching in general. So I think that's going to be our kind of our next wave of really engaging our young people in what they find attractive about becoming a teacher.
Mm-hmm. So to wrap up the conversation, what would you say to want to be a teacher, like to drive them to become a teacher?
Yeah, sure. So again, with me, I think when you talk to people going into education, you got to take like a two-pronged approach, right? So a lot of people understand finances in the way that they may not, especially our younger people, they might not understand retirement, necessarily those kind of things, but they understand, am I going to have enough money to go out to eat? Am I going to have enough money to buy a car? Am I going to have enough money to pay rent for an apartment? So you have to go at it from that approach. And you also have to go to the approach of the just awesome responsibility you have to educate the future of our country and really of the world, and what responsibility that is. So you want to, like, educate them about the finances, but you also want to really tug on their heart and talk to them about, hey, you're going to be able to make a difference. I've been in education for over 20 years, and I still see some of my students come up to me in Target or at a restaurant and say, "Hey, Mr. Petro, how are you doing?" And they show me pictures of their kids and those kind of things. Very few other professions, maybe if any, afford you that same opportunity to make a difference in the community and really make a difference in people's lives. There are pretty much every person you meet, they can tell you a teacher that made a difference in their life, or on the flip side, you may have people who tell you nobody made a difference in my life, and then look at how they maybe turned out. But I think for a lot of people that are out there living successful lives, you can ask them, "Hey, did you ever have a teacher that really cared for you, or did you ever have a teacher that you really loved?" And I guarantee you, most people can say, "Yes, Miss Green or Mr. Miller or Miss Jenkins really made a big impact in my life." So that's the one thing that you always kind of go back to, that we're doing it for the kids, we're doing it for our futures, and what a wonderful opportunity and responsibility that is.
Absolutely. That is a great point. Sean, thank you so much for talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank
Hope
you for
you
having me.
enjoy the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate y'all having me. I've had a good time, and I just am really passionate about education, and I hope that comes through. And I just really look forward to what the future holds for education.
For sure. Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.